The Uganda National Museum, a place where unforgettable memories are created. Traditions are found, and a connection to our Paul is reinforced. It is not only a testimony to the history of our nation, but also impacts knowledge of cultural and natural heritage to the present and future generations for their enjoyment. Through a variety of activities and exhibitions, we gather to discover our traditions and create new ones. The Uganda Museum is our country's cultural icon that makes it accessible for the next generations to come together as our story unfolds and represents the interplay of our country's past and present. It is in our history, but also in how it has evolved to embrace optical satisfaction and new influences. Our identity as a country is not only a moment in time, but also a journey of where we have been, where we are, and where we are going. We invite you to experience the authentic heritage, rich history of Uganda. Welcome to the Uganda National Museum.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
You're still tuned into the Alternative Digital TV, 23 minutes past the top of the hour of 8. My name is Edgar Matthew Karahanga. If you're just joining me, this show is called The Mighty Drive. We're always here every weekday from 8 to 10 a.m. having a conversation with Uganda. If you're just joining us, you should know that over 20 soldiers attacked a police station that is in Wakiso Division, and many police personnel were beaten. This is not the first time this is happening, and I will remind you, this particular year in Lubowa, a couple of soldiers attacked that particular police station and the OC, and many of the people who were there were beaten in a manner that is so bizarre. Same story last year, a couple of years ago, I think around 2022, where we saw the same phenomenon, soldiers attacking a police post in Nansana, still the same Wakiso division or district, Wakiso district. This is something that is recalling how best or how better can we be doing this as a country. Please send me your message, comment or query through our social media platforms. That is at The Alternative Uganda, but also at Digitalk TV on Facebook, on X, and on YouTube. As we earlier promised this morning, I've been joined by Counsel Eron Kiiza, a lead advocate of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, but also one of those lawyers, in fact the lawyer that joined him in the dock earlier this year. This gentleman was incarcerated in prison and sentenced by the General Court Martial to 9 months, which he appealed, and right now he's out on bail. It's not the first time that we are having him here. It's always a privilege having you, Counsel Eron Kiiza. Good morning.
Good morning. A mutual privilege and elation to be part of this Dig Talk team. Indeed, right from its nascent, its budding stages up to now.
Yes, sir.
We are still together on this journey for a quest for knowledge and freedom and meaning and fulfillment in life. And we are in this very difficult country, which is ruled over by military dictators pretending to have some semblance of democracy.
The military dictator said you call him a dictator, but he's rather a good dictator. He says, do you find a dictator such as him who gives people freedom to enjoy themselves, to do whatever they want? He calls himself a good dictator.
Yeah, which freedom when I cannot represent my clients in courts and instead incarcerated? Which freedom when your political opponents are in jail and they are bodyguards and they are what you would call foot soldiers, they are handlers and so on and so forth. So there is some freedom here. It's not a war zone, but a lot of space has been carved out by the military from what should be our terrain of liberty, of civic space, of legal practice, of doing business, of ordinary life. And we need to reclaim our liberty as Ugandans. We need to reclaim our dignity. We need to radically reconstruct the Ugandan state to ensure that it's premised on freedom, on good governance, on transparency, that is accountable to the people. We don't have a parliament effectively, and the judiciary we have is on the sick bed because it has been drained of the crucial independence it needs to exercise its functions, especially relative to political opponents of the Museveni military dictatorship.
You use the word radically, confront, and
reconstruct. I said radically
reconstruct. Yes. Yeah. But the key word for me is radical, and this has been affiliated with you a couple of times, which ultimately actually led to your incarceration. Some people were saying, he is too radical a man, he's impolite, he's disrespectful, and to some extent that it was called for. You were in contempt.
Yeah, those are stupid people who don't know that it's not necessary to be polite when I'm pushing for justice.
I'll ask my producer to bring that clip, if he can find it, of Kiiza Eron Kiiza, and just look at what they're trying to say, the radicalism that you bring to the table.
I don't see the radicalism. Insisting that I must access my space as a lawyer to practice and represent my client, if that is radical, there is a place for radicalism in life. You shouldn't be held back from doing the right thing, from doing your work. The people that must be blamed, the people that must be confronted by those people who want to make me a scapegoat for their misunderstanding of what needs to be done, of what the justice is about, are the soldiers that beat me up, that tortured me, and the soldiers that stopped me from accessing the bar. Because even in the kangaroo military tribunals, like the one that covered up the abduction of Besigye and Rutare from Nairobi, lawyers should be able to access their seats, sit with their phones and laptops, and interact with their clients in order to try to defend them in the difficult circumstances of a kangaroo military tribunal. I am aware that you can't get justice in a military tribunal, but whatever it's worth, for whatever, as long as your clients are there, you need to be there with them, trying to mitigate the damage that can be done on them.
Okay. I will come back to that particular issue because the General Court Martial that you fought so much has been reinstated back. I will ask what you feel about that, but then how was the entire experience at the prison where you were, the entire experience for you psychologically? Do you want to take our viewer on a journey of what went through your mind for those very difficult couple of months where you were behind bars?
Well, for a man who is used to his freedom, to scheduling his events, to suddenly have your timetable and life conducted, controlled, programmed by the prison authorities is nightmarish. Yeah, it is the opposite of what you want. Your choices are limited. You have no freedom. You are like a caged animal.
Yes.
And that's not where you want to be. So if someone can avoid prison, then you want to avoid it, but sometimes it's not avoidable. and therefore you make the best of it, the most of it.
How did you make the better of it?
I tried to interact with the inmates there. I read books, I did some exercises, and I was very compliant with their prison regulations. Yeah, I was aware that I was in a place I don't want to be, but it was a place I want to live intact. I was aware of the challenge, the strictures of prison imposed and visited on my mental health, and I tried to mitigate them by staying positive. It was very helpful to receive visitors in Chitalia. The moments of visitations were precious and priceless. And by God's grace, I had a number of people who came to check on me. Yeah.
Tell me about the room, that area, the ambience in the prison, what you learned. How did you find the people? Because I'm imagining there's many comrades or people who believe in the same things you believe in. You saw how they are going through. Tell me about the life of prison.
Prison life is hard, but I was relatively privileged. I had better food. I wasn't eating prison food, except on day one when I ate it and there was a problem for me.
Sorry.
I had visitors, very regular visitors. My family, friends were always there for me. There was a lot of solidarity from the public, from the activists, from
even online here, many
from
people were
lawyers, from people here in Uganda, people in Tanzania, people in Kenya, and so on and so forth. So the solidarity was palpable, was interesting, and it helped to reduce the pain and isolation and loneliness that prison can be. The room itself was small, and the life in prison teaches you to live minimally. So in a sense, if there was a positive takeaway from prison, is that I got harder. I became a more, it hardened me. So while they had put me there to punish me, and they did punish me, but if their aim was to break me, to soften me, to make me retreat from the front lines of justice, I think even after coming out, I have already proved them wrong, that they failed. I am, of course, still on a healing journey, but the most important cases, and that is the case of SJAM handling it, and a few other cases in the Constitutional Court, the most important cases, I can prioritize them and I can handle them. I have not retreated from the struggle for a free and better Uganda that is led by competent civilians, not corrupt military junta. Prison hardened me. I had to learn to live on minimal provisions. Yes, life can be on without a phone, for example. Outside here, people think that you cannot conduct life even for a day. Some people think without a phone.
Exactly.
You can spend a month without going to Twitter. You can spend 2 months without TikTok. It is very possible, ladies, gentlemen, and other people out there. So you are there with your phone addiction. You think, so yes, you can be there without your favorite food, without the people you love most, without their company, without your children. If you have them, you can still survive. It is hard. It's not ideal. It's not the situation you want to be in, but it's possible.
How about the comrades, the ones who were there? The state of...
Yes, you have to... Part of coping is that you have to make friends.
But what did you read in those people?
They are
because
different.
We rarely listen to them.
They are different, and some of them are innocent. Even those who are not innocent, they are being harassed by the system. You can imagine this kangaroo military tribunal in Machinde is remanding people for up to 10 years.
Yes.
8.
Some
5.
Without even appearing anywhere. They've never been charged.
Yes. So it is
I've heard those stories.
It is very obnoxious. It's very uncouth what they are doing there under the name of military injustice. It's terrible. And whatever court you appear before, you don't want to appear before a kangaroo military tribunal. They want to choose your lawyers. They stop soldiers and civilians who appear before them from freely choosing their lawyers. Even in the Besigye case, from the onset, they were uncomfortable with some of us as lawyers, whom they knew that we had some backbone. So they were attempting to choose Besigye's lawyers every time we appeared. So they would come up with some silly lists of who should appear and would reject them, and then it would be ping and pong, back and forth until we would enter, because we are very clear we are not going to conduct the defense of Besigye and Rutare on the list of lawyers they were comfortable with. Yeah. Yes, so either we had our lawyers and we are not going to allow that. They even wanted to tell us which words to call them. They are a tribunal, but they don't want to be called a tribunal. They don't even want to look up.
They feel it's disrespectful.
They didn't even want to look up the meaning of the word tribunal in the dictionary. So we are dealing with the people whose knowledge and wisdom and thinking was so limited that they shouldn't even be putting on military uniforms. But unfortunately, the country has so degenerated. Those are the people that are making important decisions of justice. It says something about the legacy, the bad legacy of Museveni, that he has a group of incompetent people executing injustice against the leader of opposition and other important people in this country. People who are not even capable or qualified to dispense discipline were purporting to interpret laws on terrorism, on treason and so on the issues of cross-border abduction. These are things way beyond them. Yeah.
They were the ones, weighing the evidence.
Yeah. And again, the problem with the military institution is that they're experts of violence. They're experts in force. They are not trained to do law, to do justice. Even the lawyers who enter the military, they get spoiled. By the time they finish the drills of their training, they have been deconstructed. They are no longer lawyers in peace and marrow, in substance. They have stopped being lawyers and become part of the machinery of dispensing force. Indeed, their duty is supposed to be national defense. They are supposed to be interacting with fire, but they want to come here and interact with us.
Yes. Council Eron Kiiza, lead counsel of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, and that particular council will join Dr. Kiiza Besigye in the dock away from Elias Lukwago, because we also joined him in the past. But Council Eron Kiiza was charged and sentenced to 9 months in prison by the General Court Martial for being in contempt of court. Rather a big punishment. And he's told you about what happened and how we reached that particular point. But it's rather ironical that I'm going to ask you this question to comment on the Uganda Matters Day. We are remembering people who ultimately gave their all for something they believed in. And many Ugandans and people around the world flock this country to remember them. And we are celebrating Matters Day at a time where these injustices are being dispensed. What are your remarks on this year's Uganda Matters Day?
So it is ironical that we are putting up a show of celebrating martyrs who died for the truth that Jesus stood for justice that Jesus stood for, died for, resurrected for, and that leading and on the front row of those celebrations will be corrupt politicians, people who are detaining political prisoners for no good reason, who have not committed crime except having divergent political minds. So a group of thieves will be taking front row in Namugongo, putting on a show that they are doing some important work and that they treasure these matters. In truth, they don't treasure the matters. These matters, if they were here, they would be in prison. Because the things that they expose, the people who expose such values are in detention. So there is no room for Uganda Matters in today's Uganda. If you're so keen on justice, so keen on truth, so keen on freedom, if you are battling corruption so seriously, it's unlikely that you will have the freedom to walk the streets. You are most likely to be behind the bars. Because, yes, today's matters, they are the messages. Yes. Those matters who are not yet in prison, anytime they are taking them in. So, rather than put up a big show, the thing we need to do before Namugongo is to listen to what does Jesus tell us about governance, about society. We need to stop stealing taxpayers' money. We need to show genuine care. Construct roads in Namugongo, in Nigeria, in Ichira, in Mubende, across the country. We need medicine in a hospital. Jesus was very tired and radical when he was dealing with pretenders like the ones, the VIPs in Namugongo. Feed Ugandans, they are hungry. Give them medicine. This Patricia lady is dying in modern slavery in the Arab world. The ministers are all quiet, not even a tweet, sympathizing. When we were crying out for them to help her, no one was responding.
She eventually passed on.
So Ugandans are dying, avoidable death.
And these days, it's not just only the less privileged, because we are seeing a new phenomenon where even I saw Justice Mulyango decrying the state of our hospitals at the funeral of the husband. Cedric Babu was not in the country by the time he passed on. And this raised a lot of issues, same as Jacob Olanya. It feels
because
like now
you can't kill your state. You can't drown it in misery, in poverty, in corruption, in incompetence, and think that for you ultimately not to be affected. If you get a stroke, you need reaction time should be very quick. By the time they fly you to California or Florida or Turkey or what, you might be dead. Because from here to the nearest airport in America is 16 hours in air. To Europe is around 8. Heathrow, Amsterdam, it's 8 hours in the air. Nairobi is the closest. What I'm saying is that you need the hospital next to you, which is competent, which has drugs, which has competent staff. So because we are not taking care of doctors, we are even suffering a brain drain. We have among the best doctors in the world, but they are running away to systems that work in South Africa, in India, because some of these people, when they fly there, they find Ugandan doctors. We need to keep our doctors here properly paid. I don't see why we should pay MPs more than we pay doctors. We can do without MPs for most part. After all, what are they doing? But we cannot afford to be a country without doctors in every sub-county, in some districts.
Opio said that in this country, a politician is paid more than a neuroscientist.
More than any other, there is nothing that pays like politics in this country. Nothing is going to give you easy money. Politics. Nothing is going to allow you to steal and you'll be celebrated rather than be jailed.
How did we come to this point?
Than politics. We came to this point, not suddenly, it has been gradual. As long as there was a failure to transition power from people who had grabbed it using the gun to people who had civilian authority, civilians, there was the problem. So right from 86, the coup itself was the problem, the war itself was the problem, the causes of the war were there, but they did not warrant violence. Cannot be part of Uganda's problems. As long as we still have this thinking that someone can shoot his way to the solving problems of Uganda, then we are deceiving ourselves. We are just postponing the problems. Maybe Museveni was what Ugandans needed, to have a thorough education about the futility of military solutions to civilian problems. They don't exist. There are no such a military solution to civilian exist. They are out. It is just chaos. It's trouble. We need civilians who we can hold accountable.
Some people would rather disagree
So
with you.
we-
Aren't you
we-
hearing,
we have-
aren't you hearing the new phenomenon
We have
of
dictatorship.
Ibrahim,
We have dictatorship.
Ibrahim Traore,
we
a
have-
soldier who
but
has
those-
been welcomed?
It's a phenomenon based on ignorance. This euphoria, you will die away. That's what the new breed of African leaders was. Clinton thought it was a new breed in Eritrea, here in Uganda and elsewhere. It doesn't work anywhere. It won't be long before people regret. As long as a leader becomes dictatorial, their presumed benevolence is only temporal. It's only fleeting. It doesn't take long before you descend into the chaos you see Libya in, Sudan in, Tunisia.
Exactly.
Nowhere does it work. As a starting point, you must put the guns out of governance. Then you must instill accountability, construct a state that is accountable to its people. Remember, in a military governance, citizens are not bosses of the people. The guns are in charge. Citizens cannot ask questions. Citizens cannot freely protest. Citizens cannot change leaders. Or if they change, they will change a few prefects down there. They can't change the most important leaders at the top. So that is not a governance that can make people happy, fulfilled.
Oh.
Nowhere does it work, not in Russia. If the Russians are not happy with it.
With Putin.
With the governance. They can have threats around which they coalesce as a nation, but they are not happy with that. They are being ruled by Putin, who is unchangeable.
It feels like you're wishing a Uganda that could never be. Let's look at the reality today. I've given you a story that yesterday
The reality,
policemen
yes.
were beaten by soldiers.
It is a sad
yesterday.
reality. It is that sad reality that I want to change. And the
Aren't you wishing
the
it?
military beating of police shows the ballooning of impunity in the country. These things were there smoldering beneath the surface, military and police disagreeing. But there is something that has radically happened in this country and emboldened the military people that they can now walk into a police station, beat it, and walk away with it, beat another one. This is the second police station in this year.
No, this year is the second, but in 2022 we also saw.
Yes. I mean this year.
This year twice.
In 2022 it was an utter shock, it was a misnomer, it was an
We had
oddity.
never had it, yeah.
Right now we are expecting another police station to be beaten maybe next month. Like, it's no longer a shock. We expect it.
These people are both holding
there is
guns,
a climate,
remember?
yes, there is a climate that has descended on Uganda,
Yes, sir.
whereby impunity is the order of the day. Rules no longer matter in this country. If rules matter, the Besigye would be in Kasangati sipping coffee with his family. So would be Rotary. Eddie Mutwe wouldn't be in detention.
Yes.
Akileo wouldn't be in detention. For crying out loud, it's not a crime to associate with Bobby Wine. It's not a crime to oppose Museveni. It is a duty of every patriotic Ugandan to call out the injustice that Museveni now is. Yes, it's a duty. If roads cannot be repaired, if senior citizens cannot get insulin shots in the Marago Referral Hospital, the biggest hospital in the country, what is working? If universities are being run like kindergartens by NRM cadres, whether it is Chambogo, Katunguga, or Nawangwe in Makerere, that's not the country we want. The reality is sad. So the crisis has enveloped every facet of the Ugandan society.
Yeah.
Even layers of ordinary civil society pushbacks like cultural institutions, the church, they are also afraid of what will befall them. Because they are also being intimidated.
Who is safe?
No one is safe in today's Uganda. Do not deceive yourself. Because even if you withdraw from all politics, politics will find you where you have hidden.
But many
In
have,
your bedroom.
many have decided, let's leave this. In the
Yes,
case of
yes.
Kawempe North Council, people, I think for the first time we had less than 15% people turn out to come and
I
vote.
mean, the
Less than
atmosphere was such that they couldn't freely vote. They were afraid. They had to choose between facing people who were shooting journalists and voting.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, they were all watching the news. You know how many journalists were shot at, beaten up, harassed.
I know one whose eye was plucked out on that day.
The cameras that were broken, cameras of over 70 million shillings, and not one. So the situation, you could understand why the voter turn-up was low. It was low because the military dictatorship didn't want a high turnout, and they were very open about it, and they had impunity. They were outrageous enough to go and really stop people from turning out. Even on polling day, what were the military doing there? This is police work. And even then, it has to be reasonable policing.
In fact, they were outright military trucks. If you've seen those trucks that go to war, like...
Indeed, elections have become something of a war. I was telling you that military cannot solve our problems. They cannot even manage civilian affairs because their only idea of dealing with the problem is applying more force, overwhelming the enemy. So when you tell them to go and solve a certain problem, they think there is an enemy there. So they were confusing Ugandans in the country.
They see it as an enemy. When they say a journalist, you are an enemy.
That's what soldiers deal with. They deal with enemies. They are trained to deal with enemies and not to deal softly with enemies, to apply force to the enemy. So
because these journalists that were taken in these drones, just to inform you, were tortured. And one would say, why do you torture a journalist? They don't have a political party, but they were tortured for...
So the journalists' cameras are confused for weapons. Why do you think they would be destroying them? And how is it a weapon? Because it is covering the mayhem they are inflicting on the populace.
So I'm like, okay, aren't you just shy to say what Uganda gamba ntunda mukansonyi kangambeka bannamawulire bano
ensonyi zabagwako omuntu tosobola kumutuma aduyi ate n'abeera n'ensonyi. These guys are killing machines, if you want me to clarify it for you. The fact that there was even no death is a testament to the restraint, maybe of the commander and what, but left on their own devices. If you tell them to go and solve this problem, you can easily have dead bodies, God forbid. They are not supposed to be having a role in elections. Exactly. Not in parliament elections, not in presidential elections, unless the very presence of the military in election is an acknowledgement that the EC has failed.
No, but I was at the pre-tally event.
That
let me tell you, I was at the pre-tally event.
Police is incapable.
I even had an interview with Biabakama Simon, who reiterated to them, in the presence of the media and everybody, please do not disturb the election. We have it covered.
Why did
please do not.
He should have said leave. Did he tell them to leave?
No, because they need security at the end of the day.
No, but security is not for the military. Security at polling station is for the police. So the Biabakama statement I expected from me is leave. But does he have the balls?
He said them stop, do not beat, do not batter any Ugandan who's going to vote.
Yes, if they are there, they are going to beat, they are going to batter. I'm telling you, these are killers. What were they doing there? And it was predictable they were going to come. Did he write to the CDF telling him not to stop his people from coming to Kawempe? They had no role. Not even their uniform should have been seen in Kawempe.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much. I am with Kiiza Eron Kiiza, just 5 minutes to the top of the hour of 9 a.m. I have a couple of people here watching. Brooke Williams, thank you so much for tuning in. Masge Joram, Kien Jojo, Stella Nyanzi, thank you. Kakwenza, Rukirabasaija, Sande, Serwin Joji, Bobby Wine, Tim Charles, and a couple of people. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Mighty Drive Show, always here every particular morning. This morning I'm privileged to be joined by Kiiza Eron Kiiza, one of the lead lawyers of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, and of course the one who was incarcerated and joined him in the dock, ending up spending a couple of months in prison following his finding him guilty of contempt of court. He was never charged, I think it's on record, but a reading was sent out to him, and he was sentenced for what they said was contempt of court. He has clarified on some of the things that are happening in the country, and it's now time we take a short commercial break. When I come back, we look at the new laws that have been set in motion by Uganda's parliament. There is the UPDF Amendment Bill. There is the Political Parties and Organizations Act. And of course, therein, we have the President of Uganda apologizing to Uganda, but also apologizing to Buganda for some of the things that they have done wrong. What do we read in this particular new phenomenon? And also, we have some new political parties in town. What else do they bring to the table? My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. This is the Alternative Digital TV.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
The Uganda National Museum, a place where unforgettable memories are created. Traditions are found and a connection to our Paul is reinforced. It is not only a testimony to the history of our nation, but also impacts knowledge of cultural and natural heritage to the present and future generations for their enjoyment. Through a variety of activities and exhibitions, we gather to discover our traditions and create new ones. The Uganda Museum is our country's cultural icon that makes it accessible for the next generations to come together as our story unfolds and represents the interplay of our country's past and present. It is in our history, but also in how it has evolved to embrace optical satisfaction and new influences. Our identity as a country is not only a moment in time, but also a journey of where we have been, where we are, and where we are going. We invite you to experience the authentic heritage, rich history of Uganda. Welcome to the Uganda National Museum.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
You're still tuned into Digital TV, and this is the Mighty Drive Show. We're always here every weekday, Monday to Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. 2 hours of non-stop information, giving you adequate knowledge so that you can make an informed decision at the end of the day. This morning, I'm privileged to be joined by Kiiza Eron, the lead lawyer of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, and also a human rights lawyer who has been who is well known in this country and always remembered for some of the contributions he has done to make this country better. Counsel, once again, it's an honor to have you on the drive.
Yeah, thank you. For clarification, the lead lawyer is Honorable Karua Martha, Senior Counsel, former Minister of Justice. in Kenya, and now a leader of a political party in Kenya who are going part of the coalition that is aspiring to make sure that Ruto becomes a one-term president, because he has become also a terrible dictator who aided and was complicit in the abduction of SJ and other people, the Turkish, the other people from Kenya. Kenya has become the abduction capital of East Africa thanks to the dictatorship of William Ruto, who is supposed to be a pastor.
Okay. Then we also have a lady, Samia Suluhu, who
Samia
is also starting to become...
Out of nowhere, not she's doing things of worse than those ones, because she's a lady who is not reluctant to use rape as a weapon against a fellow lady. So under her watch, Agatha and Boniface were raped in Tanzania. So Suluhu is another bad story. Yeah, another bad story. But a first premise. Once people thought Magufuli was a dictator, but we didn't hear these stories in the times of Magufuli. He dies and she comes in as vice president. I think she's from the island, Zanzibar.
Yes.
And she starts doing all a lot of political jockeying, pretending to reform, and the people in exile come back, and once they are here, they can't even participate in elections. Tundu Lissu is in detention, and no one can watch that trial from Kenya, Uganda, so much for the East African community, for Jumuiya.
Wow.
So, talking of judicial independence.
Before you even left to the judicial independence, I want to take your mind on, it's back, the General Court Martial and the UPDF Amendment Act, something that you have called a tribunal,
yes,
everything.
And
even
that's
the
what it is.
Supreme
It's
Court ruled on
incompetent. It is misery is back, injustice is back. Ugandans have to know that the parliament is a rubber stamp as it is, and they have to change. We need better parliamentarians, people with backbone.
But you have called that a parliamentary funny for the last, I don't know how many parliaments.
What I'm saying, what I'm saying, yeah, we need to stop we need a parliament full of knowledgeable people, patriotic people, and principled people. If we have these people who are sleeping and voting, people who are corrupt and can be bribed like these ones with 100 million or 1 billion, whatever, people who have no integrity and can be bribed, then we shall have these types of UPDF laws that bring kangaroo courts. We shall have this misery going on. It's not going to end. Okay, but Parliament, I'm using it as a mirror for politics. Yes. Ugandans need to be more politically active, to hold politicians to account, and to know that they are on their own. These parliamentarians do not secure your interest.
Maybe they already know. That's why they request council, if you're coming for MP, give me money.
They are securing for what?
No, what I'm saying, maybe
stomachs,
it's not a parliamentary problem, it's a people problem as we, because even for us to vote them, they will have to see you in some way. That's the Ugandan language.
You see, asking MPs to see you is the beginning of the problem. It's not a solution to the problem, because how are you going to hold to account an MP that has bribed you? We need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that a parliamentary seat is a transaction. It's more than that. It's not a transaction. It's a representation. You are sending someone to do the work you should have done if you were in that seat. And you need to send there someone who is, first of all, knowledgeable, who is competent, but also who, over and above being competent, has integrity, can be trusted. Can you trust that person with your life?
The president has said under this new law that the courts, your courts where you practice from as advocates, would not even handle chicken cases. And he said that you wanted those courts to handle soldiers who have done a couple of crimes that are even so sophisticated and very bizarre in nature.
Who is supposed to arm these courts to do their work? The president. Who is supposed to fund them? The president. Who is supposed to appoint the good judges? The president. He is showing you that he has been sleeping on his job, that he is incompetent. in failing to appoint competent judges and failing to ensure that we have an independent judiciary. He is the first person to blame. He has himself to blame if civilian courts are not working. That is not a justification for taking people from the frying pan to the fire, for the frying pan of a weak judiciary that he has denuded of independence, to the fire of a thoroughly incompetent military ensemble pretending to be a court. That will never solve any of Uganda's justice needs. So he needs to cut the crap, to stop the pretense.
No, but at least he has accepted that and said, let me bring a general court martial, which
I'm
has
saying
always
it is
done the
worse.
job.
It has never done. Which job has it done?
Disciplining the soldiers in the forces. Now he says, if you're
He's
trying to carry
soldier.
guns, if
No,
you're,
he's a
no,
soldier.
Auntie, if you're
Yeah.
trying to carry guns, then why do you want to be charged there? You come here because now you're taking part in activities that are ordinarily the activities of the army.
You see, people forget about the disciplining. Criminality is a function of the judiciary, which is independent, which is fair, which is competent. You cannot take people before incompetent tribunals and say you have solved a problem. You are pretending to solve a problem which you have not solved.
Independent.
So what has he stopped? People carrying guns? He's even pretending. He's not interested in that solution because he's the #1 gunman. He handles gunmen with soft gloves and respect and takes tea with them. And if you really want to respect from Museveni, you need to hold the gun and face him. There he will call for peace talks. The reason he's taking us for granted is because he knows we are not holding guns. Where is Mukura in a military tribunal? Where is Koyero in a military tribunal? Who of the person that have actually fought Museveni with the guns is in a military tribunal?
None.
So he is deceiving people and they are playing along and they are allowing themselves to be deceived. You cannot have problems with Museveni when you have a gun and you know how to use it properly. He will respect you, he will go in a foreign capital, he will talk to you, he will give you money, he will
saw
give
a
you a
meeting
position.
with the Codeco forces after losing a battle.
Moses
in
R is in his cabinet.
Yes, that is also
You get
true.
me? So if you want a cabinet position, if you want to respect Museveni, you may as well know how to get a gun and know how to use it properly. Because for us who are reciting poems, who are reading constitutional provisions, he takes us for granted. Yeah,
the
he
poets,
doesn't
the
take
Erons.
for granted anyone who knows the gun, how to operate it and how to use it, because he knows he was in that position, being ridiculed by some people who didn't know the power of the gun, and now he has been forever president. The only problem is that he has repeated the mistake of the people he overthrew, and he will also be overthrown for that same reasons if he doesn't die sooner than they overthrow him. So the pretense must be shown for what it is. Museveni should stop deceiving you. Okay. And it is not just here. There is nowhere that military tribunals are competent to solve the most important crimes in the world. When the world had to face and dispense justice to the Nazi problem, they turned to a civilian court, civilian tribunal. When the genociders in Rwanda had to be brought to book, it was, and these were holding guns and using them badly and machetes. It was civilian judges. There is no soldier who was part of the special tribunal for Rwanda, the special tribunal for Yugoslavia. There is no soldier in the ICC, International Criminal Court, as we speak. There is no soldier in the International Court of Justice that is handling the case of Israel versus South Africa for the genocide that's going on in Kiiza. So which case is bigger than that? Both historically and in modern times, the biggest cases are handled by competent civilian lawyers. They are not handled by gunmen pretending to be what they are not.
Okay, let's come to the judiciary, the courts here. You use the word independent, that they should be independent in nature. Do we have independent courts?
No, they are not independent, but they can be independent with the right people. At least we have hope in a civilian independence of independent judiciary. We hope, and each judge in that judiciary has a choice to make whether to be independent or not, because independence is at two levels, institutional independence and decisional and individual independence. So when you're in a particular case as Judge Eron, let us assume that you can decide to be independent. You can decide that if Karahanga calls me, I will listen to him and ignore whatever speech is meant to sway me, his side, which is the wrong side. You need to be on the side of the law, on the side of justice, on the side of human rights, on the side of human dignity. So every judge in the Ugandan judiciary has to decide whether they will be independent judges or they will be tanglikas of Museveni in order to get quick promotions like some are. Then there is institutional independence. When each of these judges as a whole becomes independent, eventually the whole institution becomes independent. But the institutional independence is secured by some safeguards like financial autonomy. The judges have a decent pay and it continues long after they are judges. So there is no excuse that there is financial pressure. There are constitutional protection. They can't be fired in the morning. So they are not going to say that I am fearing for my job. The problem is that they are fearing on losing out promotions because Museveni is the one in charge of promotions. And also how they get in is a problem. They get in through the dark road. We don't know how they get in. So there is a gambling there. No, we don't know how they get in because when the process of appointment is shrouded in darkness, is hidden from the public. Yet the public is supposed to participate in that process to weed out the wheat from the chaff. But currently a lot of chaff is being injected into the judiciary, a chaff that is without a backbone, that is spineless, that is without steel, and that is diluting the quality of the judiciary at a high rate. It behoves Ugandans to take back the judiciary. One of the institutions that in which we need to inject sanity and independence is the judiciary because it is a serious pillar of the state, of any civilized state, any democratic state. The judiciary is our bulwark against oppression. If it was not because of an independent judge, I wouldn't be having my liberty right now. For example, yes. So if Besigye had an independent magistrate in Nakawa, in Christian Nantege, he would be home with his wife hugging her probably. So it makes a difference who you appear before. If Sinjiza was an independent, competent judge, I would have left prison much earlier. So the decisions that each judge makes have far-reaching consequences on the liberty of human beings. They are not casual decisions. And it breaks my heart when I see a judicial officer lightly and casually treating matters of liberty or surrendering their conscience to those phone calls they receive.
The last time a judge stood up was Justice Chisache. Right now she's not in the country.
Yes, we all have to pay the price. I was in detention for 3 months. You get me? But I'm standing for freedom. You get me? This is a difficult country. We all must sacrifice for it. You are not going to have it easy in a difficult country. We need to stand up for these things. We need to stand up for justice. We need to stand up for freedom. It can't be easy. Yes, it can't be easy. We need to say no to orders from above. So we are not going to fear sacrifice when we need a sane state, a safe state. Or either we put in the hours, we put in the resistance, or we are going the Somalia way, the Southern Sudan way. It's very clear where we are going. Either we stop this country from descending into chaos by defending the values of dignified people, by asserting our freedoms and liberty, or we are going down the abyss. And that is the duty of every judge, every magistrate, every parliamentarian, every Ugandan, every media house, every journalist. It's not something that Besigye can do alone, Bob Wine can do alone, some magical guy.
First,
it is everyone. It can't be a few individuals. It has to be a small group. It has to be a critical mass. Everyone, everywhere must stand up for freedom. And then we can overwhelm the few people, though powerful, who are negating it.
Does it change a thing when a civilian is appointed on the General Court Martial to dispense justice?
No,
Because
it doesn't
those were
change
the
a thing. I get your
recommendations.
question. There is no hope in a military court martial dealing with crimes.
No, I'm looking at the Supreme Court ruling that was made.
You didn't
and
read
the
it.
recommendations.
You just read the
And the
recommendation of one
recommendations.
judge, and you didn't understand it. I'm telling you that as long as someone is answerable to the high command, by which I mean Museveni or his son, they can't do justice.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what you have in the Kangaroo Military Tribunal that is being resurrected in the recent bill. There is no hope of justice in any military setting, even for soldiers. So if it's a crime of a capital nature, a real crime, it should be civilian courts, as the Supreme Court said. Let the military tribunals discipline soldiers, but the pretense that they can do justice is not going to work. They are thoroughly incapable. They are irredeemably incapable of doing justice. And they will not do it.
Parliament is gone. Judiciary is also not independent.
The citizens are now on their own. They must come up. They are the last defense of the nation. If Parliament has betrayed us, if the judiciary is too weak to defend us, then we must defend ourselves.
As we conclude, there are some new political formations in the country. What difference do they contribute to what you call the struggle?
Every day, every political party has a choice to make a difference in the lives of Ugandans. Time will tell. The taste of the pudding is in the chewing. We hope they are serious about the promises they have made to Ugandans. But political parties like governments have to be checked by their members, by the citizen. The biggest office of the land is the office of the citizen. The office of a member of the political party, the office of a member of a law society, the office of a member of a journalist association. The ordinary people must remain awake with their eyes wide open and not, whoever you put in power has the potential to abuse it because power corrupts.
But are those political parties,
but we must be on our guard 24/7 to ensure that every time they slightly
but with the politics
pivot from the goal, then we arrest the situation. But if we wait for situation to spiral upon situation, then we wake up when it's too late, or we'll be overwhelmed.
Council, my question is, are they then what we need today? Are political parties with the political dispensation?
Political parties in themselves are not a problem. The problem is the climate in which we are operating. The problem is militarism. The problem is impunity. The problem is poverty. The problem is corruption. The problem is dictatorship. Those are the real problems we are dealing with. That's why we can't have water. That's why we can't have medicine. That's why we can't have enough power. That's why we can't have good roads. It's not, there's no political party that stops us. It is the national issues of dictatorship. The thing, even you're talking about political parties, in a soiled climate, political climate, they can't work.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe it's not
work.
What we But it's not now that political parties are a problem, no. Political parties are good.
Are they
associations.
Dividing Ugandans?
Ideally, they are good. Ugandans, who told you that Ugandans are all the same? It's okay for Ugandans to think different, and that's the idea of political parties, that people who have a set of values, political values especially, or economic values, they could even be green values, are brought together so that they articulate those values and aspire for power on the basis of their agenda that is unique. That cannot be a problem. The problem is that political parties are not being allowed to work by the military dictatorship.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Council, give us your parting shots. We've come to the end of this conversation.
Thank you very much for hosting me. It's always a pleasure to share views with this audience. It's a wonderful audience. I am saying Ugandans must wake up. Ugandans must know that they are on their own, and Ugandans should be suspicious of everyone in a position of power, whether it is in the political party, in the parliament, in the judiciary, and seek to hold them to account. Do not relate to these people on the basis of trust of their gods, because they are not. They are human beings. We need to keep watchful of their steps and hold them to account as soon as they sleep. So thank you. I hope that together we can resist the dictatorship and not give up the fight. And yes, we shall not surrender in doing so.
Okay, thank you so much, Council. Many people learn from you, you inspire many. That's the
I
first
also
thing.
learn from them.
And also, it takes a lot of strength to go through what you have gone through and still come up sane and strong and still holding the same values that you hold. So I commend you for being the man you are and for saving the many people you save. I know many things you do off air here and how many people you defend, and you seldomly come on the camera to show. So we commend you, sir, and I know history will remember you. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. I had the privilege of having Council Eron Kiiza, one of the lawyers of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, and of course a human rights advocate in the land who has been seasoned and now has been tried and tested. From the entire team, we'll see you again tomorrow. It will be the Woman Crush Wednesday. The ladies will be here to lead that particular conversation, but we want to hear from you. Send in your messages and questions at The Alternative Uganda. That is at Digitalk TV on Facebook and on YouTube. From the entire team, God bless you and enjoy the rest of your morning.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.